My wife said another man's name on our anniversary night during intimacy. After arguing, I found out that she was fantasizing about one of our mutual friends, which caused this to happen. She is refusing counseling, and I don't know whether or not I can trust her again. I never thought I'd be writing this. I always believed that my marriage was strong, that my wife Natalie and I had built a solid foundation of trust and love over the years. But everything changed on our anniversary night, and I'm still struggling to piece together what happened. It was supposed to be a magical evening. We had planned it for weeks. Dinner at our favorite restaurant, followed by a stay at a cozy little bed and breakfast that we had visited on our honeymoon. I had even gone the extra mile and surprised Natalie with a beautiful necklace that I knew she had been eyeing for months. I was excited, and she seemed genuinely thrilled. We laughed, reminisced about our early days, and shared stories about our future. Everything felt perfect. As the night progressed, we returned to our room, the ambience set with soft lighting and romantic music. We were both in a good mood, and I was feeling particularly affectionate. We began to kiss, and it felt like the world outside faded away. But then, in the heat of the moment, she whispered another man's name. I froze. The name echoed in my mind, and I couldn't process what had just happened. I pulled back, my heart racing, and looked into her eyes for an explanation. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice trembling. Her face went pale, and I could see the realization wash over her. She stammered, trying to backtrack, but the damage was done. I felt a mix of confusion and betrayal. How could she say another man's name during our most intimate moment? We argued for hours, and the initial shock turned into a heated discussion filled with accusations and tears. Natalie insisted it was just a slip of the tongue, that she was caught up in the moment and didn't mean anything by it. But I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. After all these years together, how could she even think of someone else like that? I asked her who it was, and she finally admitted that it was one of our mutual friends, someone we had known for years. The revelation hit me like a punch to the gut. As the night wore on, we continued to argue, but deep down, I could see that she was struggling with her own emotions. She didn't want to hurt me, and I could tell she felt guilty, but her refusal to acknowledge the deeper issue left me feeling more alone than ever. I wanted to understand why this had happened, why she was fantasizing about someone else, but every time I brought it up, she would shut down, insisting that it was just a mistake. The next few days were a blur. I tried to go about my routine, but the incident haunted me. I found myself replaying that moment over and over in my head, questioning everything about our relationship. Had I missed signs? Was our marriage not as strong as I thought? I felt like I was losing my mind, and the trust one had in her began to erode with each passing moment. In my desperation, I suggested that we seek counseling. I believed that talking to a professional could help us navigate through this mess and rebuild the trust that had been shattered. But to my surprise, Natalie flat out refused. She claimed that she didn't need a therapist to tell her what she already knew, that it was just a mistake, and that we could move past it on our own. I was taken aback. How could she think we could just brush this off? As the days turned into weeks, I found myself in a constant state of turmoil. I wanted to forgive her, to move on, but every time I looked at her, I was reminded of that night. The thought of her fantasizing about someone else gnawed at me, and I couldn't help but feel like I was living in a shadow of our former life. I tried to be supportive, to act like everything was normal, but inside, I was a mess. I began to question my own worth. Was I not enough for her? Did she find something in him that she didn't see in me? The feelings of inadequacy started to creep in, and I found myself overanalyzing every little thing about our relationship. I started to pull away emotionally, fearing that if I let myself get too close again, I would only end up hurt. One evening, after another long day at work, I came home to find Natalie sitting on the couch, looking lost in thought. I could see the sadness in her eyes, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but the wall I had built around my heart prevented me from doing so. Instead, I sat down across from her, and we both sat in silence, two people living in the same house but feeling worlds apart. Finally, I broke the silence. "Do you regret what happened?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked at me, her eyes welling with tears. "No, I don't regret you. I love you. I don't know why it happened, but I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix this." Her words struck a chord, and for the first time since that night, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could find a way back to each other, but I knew it would take time and effort from both sides. I wanted to believe that we could heal, but trust is a fragile thing, easily broken and difficult to rebuild. As I write this, I'm still torn. I want to move forward, but I can't help but feel that our relationship has been irrevocably changed. I've started to explore individual counseling for myself, hoping to find clarity and a path forward. I've learned that I need to prioritize my own well-being, even as I navigate the complexities of our marriage. I've also started to talk to friends, seeking their perspectives and advice. I've come to realize that I'm not alone in this, that many couples face challenges that test their bonds. The road ahead may be uncertain, but I'm determined to find a way through this, whether that means healing together or finding peace on my own. If anyone has experienced something similar, I would love to hear your thoughts. How did you rebuild trust after a betrayal? What steps did you take to heal? I'm open to any advice or stories you might have to share. Thank you for taking the time to read my story. On to the next story. My ex dragged my name through the mud, falsely accusing me of everything she could think of after I saw some suspicious texts on her phone. So I took her to court and left with everything. So, let's rewind to about a year ago. I, 28M, was in a long-term relationship with Clara, 27F. We had been together for over 4 years, and I thought we were building a future together. We shared a cozy apartment, had mutual friends, and even talked about getting married someday. But then, everything changed. One day, while Clara was in the shower, I noticed her phone buzzing incessantly. Curiosity got the better of me, and I picked it up. I know, snooping is bad, but I had this gut feeling something was off. I opened her messages and was immediately hit with a wave of dread. There were texts from a guy I didn't recognize, filled with flirtatious banter and plans to meet up. My heart sank. I couldn't believe what I was reading. When Clara came out of the shower, I confronted her. I told her about the messages, and instead of owning up to what I had seen, she exploded. She claimed I was invading her privacy and accused me of being paranoid and controlling. It was as if the woman I loved had vanished, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. In the days that followed, things escalated. Clara started spreading lies about me to our friends, and even some family members. She accused me of being emotionally abusive, of being jealous and insecure. I was stunned. I had always supported her and encouraged her to pursue her dreams. But here she was, painting me as a monster. I tried to reason with her, but she only doubled down. It felt like I was in a nightmare, where I was the villain in my own story. My friends began to distance themselves, and I felt utterly alone. I started to question my own sanity. Was I really the bad guy? After a few weeks of this torment, I decided enough was enough. I had to take a stand. I consulted with a lawyer about my options. To my surprise, they suggested that I might have a case for defamation. Clara's false accusations were damaging my reputation, and I had the evidence to prove it. I gathered everything I could. Screenshots of her messages, recordings of our conversations where she admitted to cheating, and testimonies from friends who had witnessed her behavior. It was a grueling process, but I was determined to fight back. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. I walked into the courtroom and saw Clara sitting there with her lawyer, looking confident and smug. I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger. This was a woman who had betrayed me, and now she was trying to destroy my life. As the hearing unfolded, I presented my evidence. I watched as Clara's facade began to crack. The judge listened intently, and I could see the doubt creeping into Clara's eyes. Her lawyer tried to discredit my evidence, but I had done my homework. I had everything meticulously organized, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate the narrative any longer. When it was Clara's turn to speak, she tried to spin a sob story about how I was the one who had been controlling and abusive. But I was ready. I had gathered testimonies from friends who had seen her behavior firsthand, and I presented them one by one. Each friend's account painted a different picture than the one Clara had crafted. As the hearing progressed, I could see the tide turning. The judge asked pointed questions, and Clara struggled to maintain her composure. It was a surreal experience, watching the woman I once loved unravel before my eyes. Finally, the judge delivered the verdict. Clara's accusations were deemed unfounded, and I was awarded damages for defamation. The relief washed over me like a wave, but it was bittersweet. I had won, but at what cost? In the aftermath, I took some time to heal. I moved out of our apartment and found a new place that felt like a fresh start. I reconnected with friends who had stood by me, and slowly but surely, I began to rebuild my life. Clara tried to reach out a few times after the verdict, but I refused to engage. I had learned the hard way that some people are not worth the energy. Looking back, I can't believe how far I've come. I turned a painful experience into a lesson about self-worth and resilience. I learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and moving on. What did you think of these stories? Let me know your thoughts about them in the comments, and thanks for listening.